friends, to yet another episode of Ponniyin Selvan. In last week's episode, we saw the interaction between Vandiyathevan and Nandini. We also saw the fearsome parade of the Chola's king's guards exiting the Tanjavur palace. And finally, we saw Vandiyathevan decide to stay that night somewhere as it was already late to enter the palace. So, shall we get into today's episode? Vandiyathevan decided to stay that night outside the palace, and he looked for the young man selling flowers to inquire about any accommodation available nearby. He found him with an empty basket standing a few feet away in the crowd, and Vandiyathevan approached him. "How did you sell all the flowers within a few minutes?" asked Vandiyathevan to the young man. He replied, "I didn't take the flowers to sell. Have you heard of Thalikulattar temple? Our family has the contract to supply flowers for that temple from since Kandaraditya Devar's reign." "Oh, is it a big temple?" asked Vandiyathevan. Not big, but quite famous around these parts. Built only of brick, yet quite famous. Even Madam Sembian Madevi really wishes to rebuild the temple in stones, but hesitated the young man. But prompted Vandiyathevan. But the young man refused to continue. "Let's drop that topic. It's not ideal to gossip, especially to a stranger. So, what brings you to Tanjavur?" asked the young man. "I have a small work in the palace, but I don't want to go inside this late. So, I need a place to stay tonight. Do you know anywhere?" inquired Vandiyathevan. "Oh, there are plenty of places. There are temple halls where you can sleep. If you don't mind spending money, you can rent a royal lodging. Or if you don't mind, you can stay at my place tonight," offered the kind young man. Vandiyathevan asked the young man's name. "It is Amudan, Sendhan Amudan," replied the young man. "That's a sweet name, Sendhan Amudan, and it's a very generous offer. Thank you," said Vandiyathevan, accepting the offer. They walked together for half an hour and reached the outskirts of the town. They arrived near a beautiful flower garden, and when they did, Vandiyathevan took a big breath of air. The fragrance from the flowers were intoxicating, and Vandiyathevan exclaimed, "Wow, what an amazing smell!" Sendhan Amudan smiled and said, "Amidst that garden is our house, where you'll be staying tonight." Vandiyathevan was elated. "To give you a sweet name like Amudan and to raise you in a place like heaven, how lucky you are. I most definitely want to meet your mother," said Vandiyathevan. "Yes, surely I'm very lucky in life, but she hasn't been that lucky," said Amudan. "Why? Did your dad pass away young?" asked Vandiyathevan, hesitant. "Yes, but that isn't the reason why I'm saying she isn't lucky. Come and see for yourself," said Amudan. They entered the garden set in a large flat land with people working in them. There were a few huts in the edge of the flower beds where the workers and their families lived. Amudan called a couple of his men and instructed them to tie Vandiyathevan's horse under the tree and offer some grass. And then he welcomed Vandiyathevan warmly into his house and introduced him to his mom. Amudan's mom wordlessly said Vanakkam and smiled. Amudan used hand signs to tell her that their guest is hungry and asked her to offer some food. Vandiyathevan realized that Amudan's mom is both deaf and mute, but she had bright, attentive eyes and seemed very smart as a result of her other heightened senses. Amudan's mom gestured to Vandiyathevan to freshen up, and when he got back from it, she had laid out a banana leaf to serve him a feast. Vandiyadevan has never tasted such delicious food. He complimented Vandiyadevan's mom immensely and thanked her wholeheartedly. After dinner, Amudan and Vandiyadevan relaxed in the cool night breeze and made small talk. Vandiyadevan made a few general enquiry about the occupants of the palace, the current scenario, etc. He learned that the palace hosts home to Sundara Cholar, his family and servants, Periya Palvettarayar, Chinna Palvettarayar, their family and servants, Cholas, artifacts and treasury, their seed reserves, food reserves, government officials, Aniruddha Brahmarayar, their families, royal guards, castle guards, etc. and etc. and a few shop owners inside the castle. Vandiyadevan asked, "Are all of them in the palace currently?" To which Amudan replied, "No, not everyone. A few people have gone out to carry out their duties. Aniruddha Brahmarayar left the palace several weeks ago and haven't returned. People say he journeyed to somewhere near Kerala." "What about Periya Palvettarayar?" asked Vandiyadevan. "He hasn't returned yet, although I did see his wife's palanquin return to the palace today," replied Amudan. "What about Madhurandagadeva?" pressed Vandiyadevan. Amudan replied, "Oh, he is in the palace. His chambers are next to Chinna Palvettarayar's only. His son-in-law, isn't it? That's why." "Really?" exclaimed Vandiyadevan. This was a news to him. Amudan said, "Yes, a lot of people don't know this. Sundara Cholar's health has been very poor, so they only had a simple ceremony. Also, since Madhurandagadeva was brought up to go into religious services, his recent change of heart has made people speculate this and that. Anyway, we shouldn't be discussing scandals. You said you want to wake up early in the morning to visit the palace. I will wake you up. You have a good night's sleep," said Amudan and left Vandiyadevan to rest. After Amudan left, Vandiyadevan looked around and greatly appreciated his good fortune in staying in such a beautiful place with such kind people. Then his thoughts drifted to his brief meeting with Nandini. How her face and her voice were bewitching. How he stood hypnotized in front of her. He remembered that he once stood hypnotized the same way long back, and he couldn't really remember where or when. He slowly dozed off and his recollection took a weird dream-like quality. He was a young boy walking through the woods. Suddenly, a king cobra slithered into his path and stood in a stance in front of him. Vandiyadevan stopped on his track and watched it completely hypnotized, mimicking its movements. Vandiyadevan knew that the snake was going to strike him soon, yet he couldn't peel his gaze off it. To his good fortune, a mongoose attacked the snake and Vandiyadevan's spell broke. He ran without looking back. Vandiyadevan jerked awake from his dream. He wondered why his thoughts drifted to snake while thinking about Nandini. Could it be that his subconscious mind trying to tell him something? Maybe. His thoughts then drifted to the beautiful lady he saw in the astrologer's house and the riverbanks. Both women were beautiful, but the lady in the riverbanks was a majestic beauty, whereas Nandini was a seductive beauty. Either way, he tried to hush up his mind and return to sleep. When the sun came up in the morning, Vandiyadevan was aroused from his sleep by a divine voice singing Devaram songs. It was Amudan indeed, and Vandiyadevan was impressed by the gentle and beautiful life he is leading. Vandiyadevan quickly got ready and prepared to leave. They had breakfast. Vandiyadevan said his goodbyes and thanked Amudan's mom. He left his horse at Amudan's house and decided to fetch it when he's back from the palace, as he didn't want his horse tired when he's on his way to Palayar. Together, Amudan and Vandiyadevan started walking towards the palace. They were chatting all the way. Vandiyadevan asked if Amudan's mother has any siblings. Amudan replied, "Yes, an elder sister and an elder brother. Sister passed away, but her brother is living in Kodiyakarai. He works in Kulagar temple and the lighthouse. He has a son and a daughter." Vandiyadevan noticed a smile playing in Amudan's face when he talked about the daughter. Vandiyadevan asked if she is his special someone, and Amudan replied, "Yes, unlike my mother and her elder sister, Pungurali is not mute. She sings very well, and she looks gorgeous." Vandiyadevan smiled, asked why he hasn't married her yet, and Amudan sadly said, "Well, she hasn't consented yet." Vandiyadevan replied, "Is that important? Even Palvettariyar has married a young beautiful wife. Do you think he asked for her consent?" Amudan replied, "Brother, it's better not to discuss royal people's affairs, especially now that the Palvettariyar's brother are in total control over the Chola kingdom. We better not. Even Sundara Cholas complies with their every wish." Aniruddha Brahmarayar left the palace frustrated by all this. This wasn't the scenario before 2 years. Only after they brought Sundara Chola to Tanjavur, all this drastic changes in power. Vandiyadevan asked, "Why was the king brought to Tanjavur?" And Amudan replied, 3 years back, there was a great war between the Cholas and Pandyas in which the Cholas won. It is said that after the war, the Chola warriors raided the Pandya towns and exploited the city and its people. Seeing this, the Pandya king's god swore to bring down the Chola kingdom in revenge. Knowing this, Palvettariyar decided that it isn't safe for the king if he remains in the Palayara. Also, since his health was deteriorating, they convinced he will get better treatment in Tanjavur, said Amudan. "So, what really ails the king?" asked Vandiyadevan. And Amudan replied, "He is paralyzed from the waist down. He can't walk anymore." "Oh, that's why he doesn't go anywhere anymore," thought Vandiyadevan to himself as they reached the palace gates. He said bye to Amudan and went to the gates. The soldiers were checking all the tradesmen and everyone entering the palace. Vandiyadevan presented the palm tree ring given by Nandini to the palace guards. The palace guards immediately saluted him and let him in without any questions. "Wow, that worked better than I imagined," thought Vandiyadevan, and proudly entered the palace. Did he complete his mission? What surprises and adventures awaited him in the palace? Let's wait and watch in the next episode. Stay tuned to Kadhatellaporom channel. Until then, bye-bye.